Well, hello everyone and welcome to Rhys Thomas Tours. My name is Rhys Thomas. I am a London Blue Badge tourist guide, and right now I am in Trafalgar Square, right in the very centre of London. And it really is the centre of London, just in front of Nelson's Column, this tall structure you can see just behind my head. Right in front of that is a roundabout, and that is the epicentre of London. All measurements are made to that spot. In fact, if you type London into Google Maps, the Google pointer will go to that roundabout here. Now, the dominating feature in Trafalgar Square is, of course, this tall column. Right on the top of that is Vice Admiral Horatio Viscount Nelson, more commonly known as Lord Nelson. Now, Lord Nelson was one of the most important military heroes in our country's history. He was running the British fleet when we were fighting against Napoleon Bonaparte, when Napoleon was building up the French Empire right across Europe. He was the man who really made sure that Napoleon didn't cross the English Channel. He defeated him at sea. Now, Nelson is still today celebrated as one of our greatest ever naval heroes. He's not always quite so celebrated anymore. However, you may have heard Lord Nelson's name in conjunction with the Black Lives Matter campaign. Now, Nelson was actually one of the loudest voices against the abolition of the slave trade. He spoke outwardly against William Wilberforce, who was the main person campaigning for it. However, I don't see the government removing this particular statue anytime soon, and any protesters, it would be an awful lot of effort to go up there and remove this statue. Nelson continues to be very celebrated, and we see at the base of the column we have these plaques. Now, these 4 plaques depict Nelson's 4 most significant victories in the Napoleonic Wars. So we have the Battle of the Nile, the bombardment of Copenhagen, the Battle of Cape St. Vincent, and perhaps most importantly his final victory, the Battle of Trafalgar, in which Nelson lost his life. Now, we can also see at the base of the column there are these 4 lions. Now, these lions are very popular. You'll see people climbing on top of them all day long. They're not actually supposed to do this. You'll see there are some signs around, there are some security guards, there are City of London police officers, you can see just behind my head here, who just make sure that people behave themselves while they're here in Trafalgar Square on Nelson's Column. Now, those lions were actually depicted by an artist who was more famous for being a painter. His name's Edwin Landseer. He was very popular at painting animals. You may well be familiar with his painting of a Scottish deer, the monarch of the glen. Edwin Landseer wasn't given a live lion to work with. He was given a dead lion from London Zoo. And of course the dead lion didn't sit in the way that he wanted, so he based the way in which we see these lions sitting on his pet cat and pet dog. So if you are a zoologist watching this and you've seen these lions and thought, well, lions would never sit like that, well, that's why. Now, Trafalgar Square is a nice open space. Look at how much space we have all around here. Lots of big gatherings take place here in Trafalgar Square. Lots of big events like Chinese New Year celebrations, Diwali, which will be coming up very soon, New Year's Eve celebrations, St. Patrick's Day, lots of big protests. In fact, there's one taking place at the moment, or at least it's a campaign for the political party for animal rights and the environment, and they're handing out pamphlets on why you should be a vegan, for instance, and that's one of the reasons there are so many police officers here in the square today. Now, you can see in the square we've got these rather large fountains. Now, these fountains were designed by one of the greatest architects of the early 20th century, Edwin Lutyens. Edwin Lutyens also made the cenotaph, which is Britain's central war memorial. I talked about it in a previous video. One of the reasons that these fountains are so large is so that you can fit fewer protesters in the square at the same time. You're not supposed to go paddling in it. However, quite often, particularly on events like New Year's Eve, you will see lots of people will throw themselves into the fountain at the end of the celebrations. Another significant celebration that took place here in Trafalgar Square is the celebrations of the end of the Second World War. If ever you watch dramatization of the Victory in Europe celebrations, then they will always film lots of people celebrating here in Trafalgar Square, like they do in the movie Captain America, for instance. Now, in the four corners of the square, you will see there are some plinths with important people from the time. Now, this gentleman here on horseback, this is King George IV, who was the king when Trafalgar Square was really being completed. Now, George IV is more commonly known as the Prince Regent. He essentially ran the country in king in all but name, whilst his father, King George III, was insane. You may have seen the movie about him, The Madness of King George. King George had a blood disease of the liver known as porphyria, which caused him to hallucinate. For instance, he was once seen shaking the hand of a tree, believing himself to be shaking the hand of the King of Prussia. So not too great. Now, this is a very flattering sculpture of King George IV. He was not as slender as we see him depicted here. No, in fact, he was one of our fattest ever kings. It's arguable he was even fatter than King Henry VIII. Now, it took about 20 men to lift his coffin to his funeral in St George's Chapel in Windsor Castle, and many people believe him to be the influence for the children's nursery rhyme, Georgie Porgy, pudding and pie, kissed the girls and made them cry. Now, his brother, King William IV, was supposed to have an almost identical statue of him on horseback on the fourth plinth of Trafalgar Square. However, we ran out of money and the statue could never be completed. So for about 150 years, there was this empty plinth here in Trafalgar Square. But since the year 2000, we have had various pieces of modern sculpture on the top of it. And we've now got our 13th sculpture has recently been revealed on the fourth plinth. Get your first glimpse here. This is The End. It's by an artist called Heather Phillipson, and you can see how it's this big swirl of whipped cream with a cherry on top. There's a fly and a drone with its propellers constantly turning. Now the drone and the fly are representing parasites. The fact that it is so full, it depicts the overloading of the big crowds we often get here in Trafalgar Square. What is going to topple it over? Is it that big cherry on the top? Is it the fly? Is it the camera drone? But it's all about how we shouldn't have so many people crowded in one place. And of course, at the moment, with everything that's going on with the worldwide pandemic, that is something that's really significant at the moment. Now, we've had various pieces here on the fourth plinth. Since I've been a tour guide in London, the very first thing I saw was a ship in a bottle. The ship was based on HMS Victory, which was a ship that Viscount Nelson sailed, but with sails that were made of African fabrics to represent London and how it is so wonderfully multicultural. Another piece that was on here was a boy on a rocking horse, mocking the equestrian statues that you find all over the place here in London, particularly in Trafalgar Square. Now, just to illustrate my point about all the protests that take place here in Trafalgar Square, we've got one coming in now. You might hear the drums behind me, so I can see lots of anarchy flags being flown, so we can see what exactly is going on. Rebel for life. Okay, so it's one saying, please come eat meat. So that's obviously going against the animal rights campaigners. So I want to get you to see it, but I also don't much want to be with a big crowd during this massive pandemic. But we can see there are people are socially distanced. Mostly, you can see big gaps between them. We've got face masks, so it's all being controlled. Okay, so I can also see there's a poster saying over 1 billion animals are farmed and killed each year in the UK. So some are against people eating meat. So yes, you get lots of these protests taking place all the time here in Trafalgar Square. Now I'm going to get out of here. I hope you've enjoyed this video. I make these videos every week, normally on Tuesdays. Excuse me for being a day late this week. If you would like to watch my videos, you can subscribe to me on YouTube, you can like my Facebook page, you can follow me on Instagram. You will find me as Rhys Thomas Tours on all of those things. If you would like to show your appreciation for these videos, you can buy me a virtual coffee on buymeacoffee.com. Or if you would like to come on a tour with me, I've been certified as good to go by Visit England. Then you can visit my website, rhysthomastours.com. Otherwise, I hope you have a great week, and I'll see you on Tuesday. Thank you.